And there we go. We're recording. Good morning. My name is Russell Gray, and thank you for joining us today for part of the Army Credentialing Assistance Program. This is a new vendor information and training session. We want to make sure that we give you guys all the information about why you should join the Army CA team, and then hopefully by the end of our meeting today, you go ahead and push that process through and become a part of the Credentialing Assistance Program. Just to let each and every one of you know, that this training is being recorded. So you will have access to it. We'll send out a YouTube link at the end, as well as if you have questions, you're more than welcome to write your questions in the chat box, and a member of our team will jump in and answer that question for you. And then at the end, we'll take all the questions, we'll compile those together, and then send that out in the email to you with the link for the YouTube video. Speaking of the team, our boss is Mr. Steve Clare. Our program manager is Mrs. Sophia Sweeney. We have Dottie Heffelfinger, Kristen Clark, John Crabtree, and with us from Solid is Christine Lovin. She'll give you guys some more in-depth information about the Army Cool side of the house as we go through. So, with that being said, let's get this party started this morning. So, a brief overview of what we're going to go over today. We're going to help you understand the difference between the different programs and the verbiage that we use on some of the items we utilize. The invite message. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the memorandum of agreement, finding your credentials, creating an account, creating an application, the certificate of completion, and your credentialing management tab, keeping up with your application, and then at the end, we're going to have an update from our program manager. So, many of you may have heard the term Army Cool, and a lot of people like to jump out and say, I'm a part of Army Cool. Well, that's not exactly how the process goes. So, the Army Cool side is the repository for all of the credentials that are listed and approved for soldiers to be able to pursue. As of right now, there's over 1,500 different credentials in there. So, you can think of it as your library where the soldiers can go and look and say, yep, this is the credential I want to pursue, and this is what's required to obtain that credential. It's also a great place for our partners, such as you, the vendors, to be able to go out and say, okay, these are the credentials that I offer, and how do they match up to what the soldiers are being trained? And you can see that information there. So that's the Army Cool side of the house. Army credentialing assistance is actually what you as vendors would be a part of, and it's what the soldiers are going to utilize once they're ready to submit their credentialing assistance funding request. So they'll go into the Army CA side and they'll put in their funding request, and that's how they get paid for those credentials and licensures that they want to pursue. Now, the system that everybody is currently working out of is the Army Ignited system. So, when you hear us talk about Army Ignited, it's the actual platform that you're going to go into to update your information, update your applications, look at your credentialing management tab, and so forth. So that's just a brief overview of the three different sections. Army Cool, remember, it's like your library, it's a repository. It's not the part that our vendors are a part of, it's where all the credentials are stored. The Army Credentialing Assistance is where soldiers are going to request the funding for their credentials and licensures. This is what you, as a vendor, are a part of. You're a part of the Army CA side. And then, of course, Army Ignited again is the platform that we all utilize to work through the CA cases and everything else. So when either you or a soldier submit to say, hey, we want to have this vendor added, and that's 90% of where we get the information from individuals to be a part of this program. Soldiers jump in and they say, there's this vendor here that's local to me that I want to be able to take this training with. When they do that, we will automatically create you an account. So you all, each and every one of you that are here with us has an active account in the Army Ignited system already. So we've already taken care of that part for you. After that, we're going to send you out the email that you see there on the screen, and it's the Army Ignited invite, and it gives you detailed instructions on what you need to do next, as far as starting your sending in your MOA, starting your application, and so forth. So that gives you a brief overview of what we're requiring from you. And you'll see this email come directly from us. So on that email, you're going to receive a copy of the MOA that you need to read, sign, and return. This is a mandatory requirement to be a part of the Army CA program. So before you can go forth and do anything else, or have your company listed, or have your application reviewed, we have to have an MOA on file for you. So here's some key things within that MOA that we need you to pay close attention to. Obviously, we need you to read the whole thing and understand it. And we understand right now it kind of reads like it's talking to a university or college. It still applies to everyone. It is being rewritten, and that'll come out soon. But for now, this is the version that's approved, and it's okay if it says some things that you may not think directly relates to you, because it may relate or something. That's okay for now. We are adjusting that. We want you to make sure that in the very top block, vendor name is included in that paragraph. So it says the MOA is an agreement between the Department of the Army and so forth. And that's where you put your vendor name. The second thing we need you to pay close attention to is in the signature block on the left hand side. That's where you're going to make sure that the signee's name and signature, the title of the signee, and your CEO, your president, your legally be responsible for communicating with the Army with this process. Name again, and then the date. Make sure all of that is in your signature block. And the third thing is make sure that it's not returned to us with DocuSign. Our leadership cannot sign it if it's signed with DocuSign. If you need to, you can put a wet signature in there if you have to. Send it back to us as a PDF without a password protection, because again, if it's password protected on your end, we can't sign it on our end to send to our leadership, and then we'd have to send it back to you. Return that MOA back to us, and then you are able to begin your application in Army Ignited. And once we receive your application, once it's been submitted, reviewed, and approved, then you'll receive a signed copy of your MOA with our leadership signature on it in your approval email. So, finding those credentials, you've gone through, you've submitted your MOA, you're ready to get started with your application. We'll show you the whole gambit on the application here in just a little bit. But this is the first stop we want each and every one of you to make, is with the Army Cool webpage. And you see the web link for it down there at the bottom, www.osd.cool.mil/army. When this is the first view of the site that you're going to see as it pops up to you. What we want you to do is down here it says full credential search. You're going to select on full credential search, and you're going to look for those credentials that you offer. You can type that in the search here. So say you offer, okay, I have project management professional that we offer. So I want to make sure that the Army CA program offers that. You're going to type that into the search, right? Search, and then it'll populate and make sure that when you add or sure that in the application here in a little bit, name into your application, what is listed on. So remember, your Army Cool should be the first shop for you as you through your application. So now that you've found that your credentials are there and you're ready to get started navigating through Army Ignited, you go to the Army Ignited website, www.armyignited.com. Some of the best browsers to use are Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Chrome. We found that those work the best. Safari really doesn't that much. So make sure that you're trying to use one of these first if you're having issues logging in. You're going to click the Get Started button on the home page. You're going to create an account in login.gov. Now, if you already have a login.gov account, say you work with government entities before and you already have that account, don't create a new one. Use the one that you already have. But if you haven't, then you'll go ahead and create a new one. You're going to confirm your email and select the multi-factor authentication method. So if you're a government employee, you're going to use your government employee ID. If you're a non-government employee, you're going to select phone. That way, it will send you a phone message to be able to continue your process, and then continue following the on-screen prompts. Again, if you previously have a login.gov account, use that account instead of creating a new one. There's absolutely no reason to recreate the wheel there. And again, become a vendor, you must first create your account. So you see there, go to Army Ignited, click Get to the process for creating your login.gov account, and enter the email address that you want to associated with that account. Make sure that that's the email address that directly relates to the business that you're going to be using, because not only is that the email that we're going to use to pair that account to the main vendor account, but that's also, if you are the primary POC for your company, that's the email address that's going to be listed on the approved vendor list for soldiers to be able to go out and say, hey, I have an issue or I need some assistance, and they're going to try to reach out to you at that email address. So make sure it's the one that you want utilized for that. You should receive an email that shows you your information for login.gov. You want to check that email and confirm that it's good to go. If you need to do a different email, then you can change the email address at that time. If you're good, confirm the email address, and you'll be redirected back to the login.gov account creation process. So you want to make sure here you create a strong password, something that you're going to remember. Uh, it is a government site, but again, it all sites have vulnerabilities. So make sure that you create a great password, a strong password for your account, and that one that you're going to make sure on that authentication method setup, you're choosing the phone if you're not a government entity, or if you happen to work for the government. We have some vendors that are actually listed on our military installations. They can use their government employee. For the majority of our vendors, you're using your telephone number. See here, you can put in that telephone number. It's going to send you a text message with a one-time security code. Make sure you enter that code in the, and you do that, it's going to turn you back and tell you you're now signing in for the first time the Army Ignited. And you're going to agree there and continue. So after you've done your login.gov and you've done your account for the first time, you're going to have access to add your email address, edit your password if you need to, delete your account. All of this is going to be available to you right there on that first screen when you first log in. So as you see on the left-hand side here, it shows you all the options that you'll have access to once you've created that account and you're ready to start your vendor account. So some additional resources with the Army Ignited side of the house. We want you to first and foremost go to the Cool homepage and check out the under the credentialing assistance tab, the vendor CA process guide. It'll give you all this information that we're going through today, step by step of what you need to do. That way, if you get hung up anywhere, you can download that process guide and you will have it at your disposal. If for some reason the answers that you're looking for are not in that process guide and you need a little bit more information, this is our email address right there that comes to our box. All these slides will be provided to you as well, so you'll have that to reference back to, so you don't have to try to copy these down right now. All right, so now that you've got all that done and you're on the Army Ignited homepage, it's going to give you the option here to get started. It's going to bring up the login.gov where you'll put in your email address and your password, and you'll go ahead and hit sign in. Now that you're signed in for the first time, it's going to tell you to request the user account. And this is very important, and it goes back to that email address that I was just talking about. When you request that user account, it's going to send us a ServiceNow, or what we'll refer to as a snow ticket, and we'll know that you need a roles request. You'll go in, you'll I believe it'll show you here in just a second what you're going to be looking at when you create that. It'll say create a case of the guest user. You'll select that, and then it'll bring you to the page that looks like this. So on the subject line, you want to make sure that you're selecting new vendor request. The case type is going to be a roles request. The subcategory is going to be vendor for CA program. And then in part four, if there's other information that we need to know, i.e., the name of your institution, the URL, your phone number, the name of your POC, all of that information is great to put into box four. So anything that you feel that would be relevant to help setting up your account and making sure that you're good to go on our end, put right there. Because once we get this email, we're going to take that information. We're going to one, link that email address to the main vendor account that we've created. And then two, we're going to send you an email back to let you know that everything is good to go and you're clear to start submitting your application and your MOA. All right. So when you're notified to go ahead and start your application process, you'll have a prompt on the main screen that says start vendor onboarding. And this is where all the fun begins. And again, you can select your name up here, and there are how-to guides and other information that you can select on the Help Center. But we would recommend, obviously, going back to the Army Cool page and selecting the VA process guide and the other information there, because that's updated monthly, where this might be a little bit behind. So your Army Cool site is going to be your most relevant information. We update all of that information at the beginning of the month, and that includes the approved vendor list, the credentials that have been added and removed, the process guides. All of that is updated at the beginning of the month. So definitely check the Army Cool site for that information first. So, beginning the application, this is part one that you'll see on the application. It's going to ask you your vendor name, the URL, the address, city, state, zip, country, how many years you've been in business. If you have not been in business for at least 2 years, you cannot participate in the Army CA program. There's no waiver to that. So make sure that you put that information in because we are going to verify it on the sam.gov site, and that's where you're going to get your cage code and everything. And we send out that information to you as far as how to get your cage code and everything set up. You have to do that before you start your application. And then, of course, your primary vendor PLC information. And here's what that's going to look like for you. Again, your vendor name and URL, your country, how many years you've been in business, and then the primary PLC information. Make sure for this part here, for the primary vendor PLC, that you don't just put it as a general box or something that you work with. It has to actually be an individual that not only the soldiers, but we can communicate with in the event your application has issues or there's something that needs to be updated. This is the person that we're going to look at contacting. So make sure that information is correct. On part two, it's going to be your payment information. So that's where you're going to put your federal tax ID, the age code. Remember, this is not something that we provide. You'll get this at sam.gov, and we will send you out in the invite email. Actually, we should have sent it out to all of you already, but we'll be more than happy to send the invite email out to you again if you need it. It's got a copy of how to create a cage code and the MOA and other pertinent information that you need to fill out and get back to us. So your cage code expiration date, there's access funding questions that are required to be answered there, primary funding POC and alternate funding POC. Again, put individual names there, not just a general box. Let's show you what those look like here. Again, and you see here where it says read me, you have mandatory questions that are required to be answered. The first one is that you will not put training and exams together unless the exam is free with training. What we mean by that, and you will see this on the application on part four when we get to it, you're going to put the total costs of everything on the top line. And then if you offer the exam voucher within the bundle, it's going to be listed as yes, provided by vendor, and the cost will be zero because the total dollar amount is already listed in the top of your application. And again, we'll get to that here shortly. Payments will only be made by the Access RMU Finance Department via government credit card. Will you accept this form of payment? Our finance team is going to reach out to your primary and or alternate payment POC to make that payment. They'll say, "Hey, I'm looking to make a payment for this soldier, for this course, for this date," and they'll make the payment with you over the phone, and then you can send the receipt right directly to them so that they can put it into the soldier's record. Access will make the payments on behalf of soldiers. Will you comply with this? So the soldiers will not pay you directly. We do not send the money to the soldier. And just in the same instance, if there is a refund that has to be requested for some reason, you will not send that money back to the soldier. We will communicate with you and discuss with you if a refund has to be sent back. And that goes right into this Army Access. Army U requires a refund only to the Army should the soldier be placed on deployment orders or for an emergency situation. These may not be the only conditions for reimbursement. Army U will notify your organization should this occur. No refunds will ever be made to the soldier. So will you agree to provide? And again, these are mandatory items to be a part of the program. You've got your primary and alternate POCs for your payment that you'll list there. Make sure all of their information is correct, phone number, email address, etc. Part three of the application. Again, there's required questions there that you'll need to answer. The certificate of completion is a biggie. It is a required part to be a part of the Army CA program. You have to provide a certificate of completion to the soldier. Even if you're only offering training, they come through for you for a online or 2 week training course. As soon as that soldier completes it, they have 10 days from their end date to submit a certificate of completion. Now that you have access as vendors to a credentialing management tab on your profile, it is a vendor's responsibility to go in there and update that certificate of completion on behalf of that soldier. Accredited and approving authorities, this is required to fill out, but it's okay if you mark no, and I'll show you those here in just a second. Vendor URL and files uploaded. Make sure that you put your statistics in there. Make sure that you put if you have a syllabus, it's uploaded there. Make sure that you're recording the number of soldiers that have passed the exam. Even if you are for training, you need to reach back out to those soldiers and say, okay, how many pass? That's information that needs to be uploaded here to show that you have the ability to provide that credential and that you're actually having members pass the exam, that it's going toward that. Now, here's a caveat to that. If you are an approved training provider of a company, say you're an approved training provider for CompTIA or you're an approved training provider or an actual credentialing body. If you are CompTIA themselves, then you can put a letter in there saying that you are the credentialing body or you are an approved training provider. Here's the supporting documents. And then, of course, if you have statistics on soldiers or individuals, period, that have been hired at the completion of your course, this can be added there as well. And you'll see this on part three. Again, the certificate of completion requirement. And this is where I was talking about it's okay if you mark no, if you're not a part of the Department of Veteran Affairs or the Department of Labor or any of these others, you can mark no, but still make sure that all of these are filled out. And then, of course, this is where I was talking about uploading your files and filling out those URLs. Anywhere on this application that you see there's an opportunity to put a URL in there, put the URL. Even if it's your vendor URL to get to your website, put it into that location. If you have a link on your website that shows the individuals that have passed and gotten certification, put that URL there. Upload those files there. These are mandatory parts that we need you to fill out. This is the template that we created. You do not have to use this template if you're recording the pass-fail statistics for the exam. But the biggest parts on this that we need, again, you can use your uh, own type of template if you have one already. But we need to know the credential, the month and year. Say so if you are looking, these are the numbers for 2020 to 2022. You can put that there, the number of individuals enrolled and the pass percentage of those that pass the exam, not the training, the exam itself. So part four, this is where you're going to add your new training items, and all of this is required to proceed to the next screen. So there's two parts to part four. On the first part, you're going to add, if it's a training or exam, you're going to add the name of it, the associated credential name. Remember, this is what we talked about going into the Army Cool site, making sure that the credential name is there. Don't just type a name of something in there and put it there. Actually link it to a credential that is listed on the Army Cool site, because that's how soldiers are going to be able to go in and look for it. If you type in just a general training name and that associated credential name, they're not going to be able to find your listings, and it's not going to be approved on our the format, if it's online or in person or a hybrid between the two, the locations, and then provide the training agenda and syllabus there. You'll see there, again, the training or exam name. If it's a training or exam associated credential name, you'll see there, this one's CompTIA Security Plus. The format, they provide it online, so they don't have to put the location here. But if it's in person, then you'll select location, and you'll be able to pick all the locations that you offer it. Some individuals offer it not only just in the U.S., but several locations around the world, so you'll be able to select each one of those that you offer the training for. All right, so part two of part four. This is where you're going to put in your information. This is the meat and potatoes of your application right here. You're going to put in the cost type, if it's an exam or training, the item name, the item provided by vendor, yes or no, the number or ISBN, the cost, quantity, and URL. So something that's important to remind you, if training and exam is included in a bundle, you remember place the total cost of everything on the first line, and all remaining items should be listed as $0 and marked as yes provided by the vendor. When you're putting your costs into your application, make sure you do not use the dollar sign. We've found that when you put the dollar sign in and you try to put your total costs in there, it reverts it back to, like, say you were putting in $2,000. Sometimes it'll revert it back to $2. So just don't put the dollar sign in there, and it should save. Remember, training and exams cannot be itemized together if an exam has a cost associated with it. So put the total cost in the first line and then make the exam cost $0.00. And we'll show you here on the next couple slides what we mean by that. So this is an example of if you were just adding the exam, an exam by the item provided by a vendor. If there's a number associated, you can put it in there, the cost, and then the quantity, and then the URL. If you do not offer an exam, and here's a good caveat of if it's on a training bundle or by itself, if you do not personally offer that exam, it's best to leave it off of your application. That way the soldier knows that they have to go somewhere else to complete the exam and you're only offering training. Here's an example adding an item with it. So this is the training bundle. The item name, do you see the training name there? Yes, provided by the vendor. Cost, the total cost is right there. And then they have exam. This is where you would type in exam voucher. Yes, provided by you, and you see here it's $0.00. Now, here's an example of if something is not provided by you, say you have a training bundle, but they have to go to Amazon or something to get this book. So in this instance, you can put yes on the training line, put the name of the training down here. But if you don't offer the book and they have to go somewhere else to get it, this is an instance where you can put no here, put the name of what they need to find, the ISBN number where they need to find it at, the cost. There should be a URL link down here as well where they can go to it and find it. This is only pertinent to books, study materials, items like that. If you do not offer the exam, do not list it on your application. Do not list it as no. Here's an example of adding for a Class A CDL program. Again, you have the total cost here on the top line. You have books here, yes provided, application fee, the physical and the drug tests, you have those there. They're both marked as yes provided by vendor, and the cost is $0.00. Here's one for our flight training that we deal with quite frequently with our private pilot and commercial pilot and CFI trainings. Again, they want, if you add the FAA check ride, if that's a requirement part, it is an exam, so mark it at $0.00. Here's an example for an A&P, an airframe and power plant. We just had this example last week, so we wanted to add this into the training. Make sure that you put the total cost there, and then you break everything down. If it's offered within the bundle, break it down because your application, excuse me, your application and your invoice that you're going to provide the soldier when they request it from you should look exactly the same. So on that invoice, I would be looking here to see a total cost of 25.80.85, and then you're offering books at $0, book here $0, book here $0, and then the total at the bottom again should show 25.80.85. So the two should match. Part four of the application is probably the most difficult for most of our vendors. So that's why we wanted to add the different scenarios in. And again, you will have not only a copy of these training slides, but you'll have a copy of you can access the CA vendor process guide on the Army Cool site under the credentialing assistance tab. Bundling is okay for training and exams as long as the exam is $0.00. If you don't offer the exam, just don't put it on your application. Non-exam items can be listed as no, but you have to make sure that you provide the information of where the individual can find that. And remember that service members are only allotted $4,000 per fiscal year. So if your training, say, is $10,000, soldier's only going to be able to request at one time if you list it as just $1,000. How you can help you face of it is I'll just use that I'll use that as an example. Project management training phase 1, project management phase 2. That way that soldier can go back each time and request that training again to be able to complete it. Here's an example of our template for the certificate of completion. Again, you can use your own version if you so like to, as long as you have these key items identified: the soldier's name, the course and name of which they participated in, the start and end date for that course, the vendor name, if the soldier failed or completed the training, and the date. We do need a certificate of completion or a certificate of non-completion if you have a soldier that was signed up to take your course and their end date has passed. Please make sure that you submit that into us. If a soldier has submitted a training, you see that they've only linked it for 1 day on their application or on their CA request, and you see it in your profile. Reach out to that soldier and say, hey, you need to submit a snow ticket and go in and request an extension 1 year to be able to complete that CA request, so they can go in and request a snow ticket. It has to be done by the soldier, not the vendor, to extend their completion date, and then our team can do that for them on our end. So keeping up with your application, we review all of the vendor applications annually. So during the annual review, you're going to want to make sure that your cage code is good to go, your cage code expiration is updated, your POC information is the same or updated if it needs to be changed. Make sure all your URL links are still valid. Make sure your training item costs are good to go. After the annual review, if you need to make a change to your application, say you need to increase the price of an item that you've already listed, you have to allow for at least 90 days before soldier's price quote. Price changes, and they're going to put that on your application. That way, once that new one rolls in, you can go back into your application and delete the old information, and it doesn't cause any confusion on your application. If you are decreasing your price or if you are adding an item to your application, there is no 90-day wait for that. It's only if you are increasing the price of something that's already there. And again, the cost on your application is expected to match what's on your itemized price quote to the soldier. So I know I've gone through a lot of information, and I'm going to go over and transfer it to our program manager to give you some updates from her end. And we'll, again, allow for questions and everything at the end. But if you have questions now, feel free to type those into the comment box. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to our program manager, Sophia. You've got the ball.
Thank you, Russell, and great job. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session. Hopefully, this has been informational to you, and you'll understand more of what it requires to become a vendor. Once it might seem a little, tasking at first, but after a while, you'll see it'll become a lot easier and shouldn't be too much of an issue. But again, if you do have questions, please feel free to ask. We have no problem assisting wherever it is that you need help with. So I just want to go over a couple of things. When it comes to marketing materials, this is a big thing that we're trying to get under control right now, because there's vendors out there that are posting things like, the Army Cool program, when it's not the Army Cool program, it's called the Army Credentialing Assistance Program. Just as Russell talked about towards the beginning of the session, to clarify the difference between what is Army Cool, excuse me, the repository, and then Army CA program. That is the program where soldiers request funding for. And the platform, just the system is Army Ignited, okay? So it's very important that any type of marketing materials that you want to put out there to, market the program or your courses, that kind of thing, that you please feel free to submit them to us for review. We'll look to see that everything meets the, you know, meets the intent, doesn't violate any type of DoD standards, right? So that's what we'll be looking for. And we do review occasionally when, we find out about a website, and then if there's bad information that's out there, or, it's just not necessarily bad, but you're confused on what is the CA program and the Army Cool program, we can talk to you about the adjustments, so that you can get that fixed. Installation access, we get asked a lot about being able to access, installations to provide your information, to soldiers. Well, that's that right there is huge thing, right? If you access the installation without approval, you could be banned from, ever providing any information on that installation, as well as being banned as a vendor for CA. So installation access is something you do through the ServiceNow program or ServiceNow system or SNOW, right? You submit a request to enter access to that installation, but you must be an approved vendor before it'll even be considered. Okay, that approval for installation access goes through the installation's education services officer, right? They will give you approval or, deny depending on what the situation is, right? So hopefully that helps with that. Aggressive tactics, we do have it in the MOA. You cannot try to, be too pushy about your program. We have seen vendors who will constantly call soldiers. In the MOA, it states, no more than like 3 attempts to contact a soldier. Should you continuously do this, you will be removed as a vendor. If you're an approved vendor, you will be removed, because we don't allow for aggressive tactics towards any soldier when it comes to the use of credentialing assistance. And there is a CA policy that is out there currently that's actually listed in the Army Cool site. I know Russell already posted that, but in Army Cool, there's a credentialing assistance page. If you click on that, it's either in the yellow box or in the black bar, credentialing assistance, it will take you to where you can download and read the CA policy. And again, he talked about the vendor step-by-step guide. That's in there as well. You can basically view all of that stuff. And I also get the questions of, well, how do the soldiers submit their CA request? Well, there's also a soldier CA process guide that's in there. So you're able to download that and look to see what their view is on their end, right? So ultimately, everything you really need is going to be on that CA page. And then I don't know, I'm sorry, Russell, I don't know if you mentioned the management queue, but once you do have an established account, it's approved, and the soldiers start submitting CA requests. Once the CA team processes a case, we will actually, once it's processed, it'll move to finance. And when it moves to finance, at that point, you will be able to see that soldier's CA request. And so you might be giving out custom quotes to soldiers and say, oh, gosh, I haven't seen anything on these guys. And, the class date is coming up. Well, we have up to the 30 business days to process and pay that case. So we are a very small team, so it does take us a while to get through the CA requests. So it could take up to, a few days prior to the start date, right, to see that soldier in your queue. This is the reason why we have them contact the vendors prior to submitting their CA request, so that they can register at that point with no money down. We don't, no soldier can put any money down out of pocket because they will not be reimbursed. But if they register with you, or we're asking that vendors hold their seats when they do contact you for that quote, Yes, we will, it will take us a little bit to get to that CA request, but you will see it if it is processed within a few days prior to that start date. Finance is also trying to keep up with making the payments. They're making the payments on time. But sometimes it can be the day of the start date for that soldier to or that vendor to receive the payment. So if that's a huge no-go for you, this might not be the program, because it does take a bit to get this entire process, with the from start to finish or start to payment. It could take a while to get that payment. Okay, and we do have some vendors that will, wait until the day of before rejecting a soldier from their course. Okay, so I think that is pretty much all I wanted to go over. I know you guys just heard a whole lot of information and are trying to process what's going, all the details, but if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. We can answer whatever. It's a very small group, so we have, time to answer your questions if you'd like.
Before we jump into the recap and all the general questions, I wanted to allow the opportunity for Miss Christine Loving to jump on the line with us as well and give her perspective as far as things from the Army Cool side of the house. Christine?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am the lead over at the Army Cool side. So, specifically, when you need to contact the Army Cool website, not the CA team, but about something on the Army Cool website, there's a contact us button that you can click there. And if you submit a contact, that comes to me and my team, and you'll likely receive an email back from me. So, that's kind of where you and I might interact. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about how credentials can get put onto Cool. That's usually the question that we get a lot. And credentials that are newly identified often come from either vendors or soldiers, or we get them sometimes on other reports. So when a new credential is identified, we do a preliminary review to make sure it's actually a certification and not a certificate or a course. Those are not included on Army Cool. And then we have the DoD Cool standards, which are required by the US Code, and that were then amended by NDAA FY17 Section 561. Don't need to know that, but it is a government requirement. And so we have the DoD Cool standards, and those are also posted on Army Cool. And we send those to the agency that offers the credential. They provide back a bunch of information. It's, I believe, 14 or 17 standards. We've recently changed it to group some. When they send it back, they're given 90 days, 60 to 90 days to send it back. When they send it back, we do a comprehensive review of it, and then a recommendation is made to the service leads, and a decision is made about whether or not to include that credential on all services Cool sites. So that entire process can take several months. I mean, we give the agency 2 to 3 months just to respond, and then it can take another few months depending on how complex the information that's sent back is. If they send us back, hundreds of pages of manuals, we may need to go through that if there's a lot of follow-up questions. So I just want everyone to be aware that it's great. Please feel free to recommend credentials. If it fits within the certification model of the DoD Cool standards, we'll go ahead and issue those standards documents out to the agency. But just know it's not going to be an overnight process. It takes time to go through this. And it is all managed by DoD. So it's not just an Army decision. It's managed through all of the services. Other than that, Russell mentioned all the great stuff on the credentialing assistance page. There's really good information there. There's also an FAQ page that might answer some of your questions. But if you do have questions about anything that's on Army Cool, please feel free to submit an Army Cool contact through the Contact Us form, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction, whether we can answer it or we send you back to the CA team. to answer your question. But I think that's it from my perspective.
Thanks, Christine. We appreciate you having you on today. All right, everyone. So we went over the knowing the differences between the different sites and systems, the invite, the Army the Army CA Memorandum of Agreement, the Army Cool site finding your credentials, creating your account, creating your application, your certificate of completion template, the credentials, keep up with your application, the PM update, and an update from so I want to make sure that each and every one of you, again, you'll have this information sent out to you when we send you the video link and everything else. But here is some great links and emails for you to utilize as far as submitting your snow tickets, locating credentials, the credentialing assistance page, guides on DoD logos, installation access, and then, of course, obtaining your cage code. Some great resources there for you that'll be sent out to you. But at this time, we want to jump around and we want to open this up for questions. If anybody's got any questions for us that they'd like to bring up on the net.
Yeah,
Do we have any questions in the box that need to be answered?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to ask.
Sophia?
Yep, 1 second. So Cameron asked about the, the 4,000, and you told him about the phasing for active duty soldiers. I just want to make sure Cameron understands that the $1,000 only applies to active duty soldiers. So National Guard and Reserve soldiers, they receive the $4,000 each fiscal year. So every fiscal year they can request additional funds. And then Bailey said, how do we submit the signed MOA? Directly through email? The audio was cutting out for me when discussing the MOA. And yeah, the answer is through the email that is showing on the screen right now. And then Cameron said, thanks. Well, it's his name is Russell. His last name is Gray. Would you be willing to set up a conference call with him? So Russell, you can discuss that with Mr. Cameron, I'm sorry. And then let me see, Cameron does have his hand up. Go ahead, Cameron.
Well, I didn't know if we could unmute or not, so I apologize for that. My questions are just in regards to the whole flight school related thing. We have fixed wing flight training, helicopter flight training, and the cost for that stuff is fairly expensive. And I just didn't know how you guys worked with flight schools, especially with the limited amount of funds that a soldier could get for training. Even if it's $1,000 or $4,000 annually, that doesn't get them very far when it comes to offerings that we would offer. So I was just curious, what the best approach is for us to work with this program.
Right. So we understand it doesn't necessarily cover the flight school type of courses. However, that's basically the soldier's choice. If they want to, request additional or pay out of pocket for, to kind of stay abreast, they can absolutely do that. Or one thing that we do recommend is if a soldier is trying to do, let's just say a regular, a National Guardsman or a reservist, right? And they're using the $4,000 and they can get up to 8,000, right? So it's 4,000 if they do it at the end of the fiscal year, and then it kind of rolls right into the next fiscal year where they can request the next $4,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah. When does that fiscal year start and end? Is it at the end of the year, or is it some other time during the middle of the year?
No, the fiscal year ends 30 September.
Okay.
And the new fiscal year starts 1 October. So that's always a good thing to recommend to soldiers that are trying to kind of push through, they could, they can request towards the end. I always say, like, hey, have your start date begin like, in September or in August, right? That way, when we open it up to allow for them to request or submit requests for the next fiscal year, they just kind of go, they just kind of continue to roll on through. Now, when it comes to active duty soldiers, that's going to be a little different. They're going to, if they want to, get it over with as soon as possible, they are going to probably have to come out of pocket for a lot of it, since they only receive $1,000.
Okay. No, I totally understand. I appreciate the explanation. Now, my last question around I believe you called it phasing, where you had different phases. Um, can the soldiers, is the total amount, I am talking the 4,000 and the 1,000, is the total amount per fiscal year per phase or per training course, or is that a lump sum amount?
So it could be a lump sum amount. So if
Cut out there just a little bit as you were going through.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the question that I'm asking is, if we set up different phases that the soldier could, I guess, request funds for, is the $4,000 and the $1,000, that, depending on, if they're active or non-active or whatever, or if they're in the reserves, are they only allotted that total amount per year, or are they allotted that amount per different phases that they want to train for? If you guys can hear me.
yeah, I can hear you. I think Russell has like this delay. Russell, are you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I'm not sure if that made
Okay,
it.
yeah. Sorry about that. So it's yeah. So as far as your phasing, when a soldier goes to request for training, again, the phasing is more or less trying to keep them from having to pay a lot out of pocket. We understand that there are going to be instances where individuals may have to come out of pocket, especially if they're looking to their pilot training done at one time. But when you set up the training that allows you to do the flight trainings, they'll say, okay, you're authorized $1,000, so that equates to this many hours school and stuff like that. And then the soldier may come back and say, well, the Army CA is only going to offer this amount on the National Guard and Reserve side, because a lot of these individuals are trying to put this toward jobs that they're working on in the civilian sector. So they'll say, well, I'm good with going ahead and taking care of make sure that I get the rest of what I need. If you start phase 2, I would do that at the start of the next fiscal year. So I'm going to submit my application in toward the end of, say, FY22. I'm going to submit my application. And 3 rolls down around, and I can jump right back in and continue my training. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I caught just a little bit of that. You are breaking up quite a bit, and you were breaking up quite a bit during the presentation too. So maybe we can touch base offline so I can get a better explanation from you where the audio is not breaking up so much.
Yeah, I think it's best.
Sounds good.
Yeah, if you just send us an email, Cameron, and then we could definitely get a meeting set up with you.
Okay, sounds fantastic.
So are there any other questions? Anyone? Okay.
We had one about the how long does the application take? So it's really dependent upon way to us. You can actually go in and start your application in the system. We review the pending applications that are in the system daily. We go in there usually every morning. Viewed. So as soon as you've submitted your application, everything, take a look and that all your information is correct. And if you're good to go, then you'll receive a copy of your signed MOA. We usually get those back pretty fast from our leadership. And you'll get a copy of that signed MOA, and then you'll get an approval email that tells you that your application's been approved and that your information's live on the site.
Right. And so just like he said, it's pretty quick and easy. If you've met all the requirements, it can take anywhere from a day to a few months. Just depends on, how you entered everything in the system, and whether you met the program requirements or not. And then another question was about the non-US nonprofit enroll. Can you enroll in this program? Non-US nonprofit. So what I will tell you about that is, if you can get a cage code with the Army, with the government, right, with sam.gov, and you're able to work with government agencies, then you would still be able to participate in the program. But if you cannot obtain a cage code through sam.gov, then unfortunately you will not be able to participate in the program. Does that help? No, I don't butcher your name. An N cage code? Okay, NATO. Well, this has to have, so if it's through sam.gov, is that who it's through? I don't know what a NATO cage code is. Okay, so yes, it is. Okay. So once you submit your cage code and in your application, we'll review, and then we can let you know whether it can be approved or not. Cameron, do you still have questions? Because I see your hand is still raised.
No. I guess I have to lower it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Technology. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. Gotta love it.
I know.
So is there any other questions before we close out? Does your training need to be accredited? The answer is no, it doesn't have to be through an accredited source, right? So it will be fine. We accept the CA program can fund any type of training, whether it be from a college, university, a business, a mom and pop shop, that kind of thing. Just as long as your training can help lead a soldier to the credential that's listed in Army Cool, that is what we're looking for. It does have to be, we do have to have, just like Russell stated earlier, we do have to have proof that that soldier can take your training and actually pass the exam. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, is there any other questions at all before we close up?
Sophia, would you recommend that I email you and Russell both just to set up an offline meeting, or
Yeah.
just Russell, or do you want to be included on that?
Yeah, you can absolutely CC me. That's fine.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, well, I know Russell's having some technical issues right now, so if there are no other questions, we want to thank you very much for attending today's session. It is recorded, and he will send out an email with the recording, the link to the recording and slides. So again, thank you very much. If you want to join in this afternoon session, please feel free. You can do that as well. All right, have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.